Hey everyone and welcome back to the channel. So if you're new here, my name is Ray and I'm a second year Cambridge student studying physics. And at A-levels I achieved 4 A-stars in maths for maths, physics and chemistry. Now, because of that, a question I get often from year 11 students is that how can they best spend the summer to optimize for getting the best possible grades at A-level, and I do have a few thoughts on that, which I will present in this video. So in this video, I will be working under the assumptions that you want to achieve A's or A-stars. You will be studying STEM-related subjects, so computer science, maths for maths, physics, chemistry, and biology. You want to go to a Russell Group university or even to Cambridge or Oxford. But if you're planning on doing humanities subjects, and hopefully you will still find some of the advice useful, maybe not the academic advice on improving your problem solving abilities, but more so ways of spending your summer, like finding opportunities for next year. So as always, timestamps will be in the description, so do check those out during the video. So my first recommendation is that you don't bother studying ahead for your A-level subjects. And this may seem counterintuitive because people think, oh, well, the harder subject is, the earlier I start, the better position I'll be in by the time exams come around or something like that. And this is what plenty of year 11 students think as well, which is why they go and buy revision guides and textbooks and stuff and start learning ahead for their A-levels. And the thing is, I've had plenty of friends who did that and they scored no better in their A-level results than people who hadn't actually did that during the summer. And those who actually waited around until September to start studying for their A-levels. And I think the reason for why they didn't do any better in the end is because they never really focused on improving their problem-solving abilities. So there's an article called The Calculus Trap on the art of problem solving, which demonstrates this issue quite well, and that's linked down below in the description. But basically the article says that for an avid student, rushing through the school curriculum is not necessarily the best approach or option to actually getting better. Now the article does focus on maths, and it says that for a maths student who wants to get ahead, it's much better for them to develop their problem solving abilities instead of trying to rush through the curriculum and learn as much content as possible. Because if they have better problem solving abilities, then more advanced mathematical concepts and ideas can be built upon that foundation. So the way I like to think about it is that during GCSEs, you sort of developed yourself a toolbox with a bunch of tools from all the skills you developed during that subject. And at A-level, you're going to develop even more skills and have more tools in your toolbox. And it's much better for you to learn to use existing tools you already have in more complicated situations and scenarios, rather than actually just throwing a bunch more tools in there and hoping that you'll be able to manage like that. Because only by refining your abilities with the existing tools you already have can you get really good at your subject, especially when you don't have to learn any new content, such as during the summer after year 11. Now this explains why some of my friends scored no better despite learning ahead for their A-levels. They just kept throwing more tools into a toolbox without improving their abilities or refining their abilities with any of the existing tools they've already had. So by the time their exams came around, the people who already had a really good toolbox of tools they knew how to use inside out, they scored much better, whereas people who sort of knew how to use some of the skills and tools they've learned at GCSE, and then at A-level, they didn't score as well. So the question then becomes, how do you spend your summer refining your existing abilities with the tools you already have? And this is where my recommendation for STEM subjects come in. So I have a link in the description down below, which includes some problem solving bookmarks, because I think improving your problem solving abilities is by far the most beneficial thing you can do if you're studying even maths, physics, chemistry, maybe biology. I didn't take biology, and definitely computer science as well. So I think the most useful links there are to UChemT papers because they really do help you improve your problem solving abilities, as well as to brilliant.org, which hasn't sponsored this video, but there is a community page on which you can do a lot of problems for free and not have to pay for the subscription. And I think I'll make a video about it sometime, and if it's out, it should be linked up somewhere by now. And I think a few other disadvantages of learning ahead is that you can't really ask your teachers any questions because they haven't started teaching you yet. So if you develop a misconception or a misunderstanding of this topic, that can be really hard to remove. So I think it's much better to wait until your lessons, where you can actually engage with lessons more, ask your teacher questions. That helps for when they write your reference and stuff for universities because you've engaged with lessons, and you won't find it as boring because it's like the first time you're seeing the material, which makes it much more interesting and fun. So my second recommendation is that you should learn to study effectively if you don't already know how. And that's because studying effectively is a huge time multiplier. Now at A-level, a lot of people used to ask me how many hours I studied a night and stuff like that, and they'd often be surprised to learn I studied for less hours than them, but was still getting better results than them. And that's because I was studying in a more effective manner Like for me, doing about 2 hours of flashcards is probably just as good as them spending about 10-15 hours highlighting and rereading a textbook, because doing flashcards and using active recall and spaced repetition is really effective. Now, I actually have a series on studying effectively for GCSEs and A-levels, which is linked somewhere above right now, so do watch that series if you do have time, but I wouldn't recommend watching it straight away. I recommend watching it about a week or two before your A-levels starts, and you can sort of come up with an idea or a plan or a strategy for how you're going to approach them. Now, the series does cover about 90% of everything you need to know, and that's because the remaining 10% is usually the hardest to get, and you don't really gain much else from learning that remaining 10%. It's much better for you to have the framework and foundations in place, and then figure out the more refined strategies as you go along. So I don't tell you what time of day you should be studying, and people try to find out what time of day I was studying and try to copy that, but I'm like, my daily routine is completely different to yours. I took the tram to school at different times, stuff like that, so yeah. So just make a few notes on the series and don't get caught up in designing the perfect system, because you will never be able to design a perfect system. You can design a good system in place, and then when something goes wrong, or when you feel like something isn't quite working as well as you thought it should be, then you can stop to yourself and think about why it's not working, and then you may come to a realization that you've been spending too much time doing this process, which isn't particularly effective, and you should spend more time doing active recall, or spend more time doing some practice questions in between topic tests and stuff like that. Also, with studying effectively, I would recommend learning to ask for help if you don't already know how. Now, a lot of people at GCSE and A-level sort of just sit back in their chairs, hope that someone else asks that question for them, despite them not understanding a part of the teacher's explanation or something. And I think that comes down to being afraid to look stupid, which I was never really afraid to do. And I asked a lot of stupid questions at A-level, and people like laughed at some of the questions I did, but I didn't really care because I was actually learning and understanding material better as a result of those questions. And the thing is, most people are probably also thinking the same question in your lesson, but are just too afraid to ask it. And I think this comes back to a spotlight effect, which is that people have a tendency to think that others think about them more than they actually do, which is completely not the case. Like, if you can remember your own embarrassing moments quite easily, and you probably feel like others have remembered those embarrassing moments just as well as you have, but the thing is they haven't, because if you try and think back to a time where, I don't know, someone else from your school or something had an embarrassing moment, you'd probably struggle to remember that, because like the thing is, people just don't remember and they just don't care. Everyone's too busy focused on their own lives. So with that approach sort of in mind, I wasn't really hesitant to ask any questions, because I knew it would improve my own understanding and my own grades. And the people who like cared too much about like the questions I was asking, or thought it was a stupid question or something, well, I mean, they're gonna forget, and they clearly don't have much else to do. So now I also recommend that you be proactive in finding opportunities for yourself, especially throughout year 12 and during the summer after year 12. So in the summer after year 12, I attended 3 different summer schools, which were the Eton College Summer School, which was for state school pupils, one at UCL, and another at Cambridge. And I could have attended one at Oxford as well if it didn't clash with the Eton one, so yeah, I could have attended 4, but whatever. Now, generally, summer schools and math camps and these sort of opportunities between year 12 and year 13, the summer in between, are a really good way to spend that summer, because it lets you meet a lot of interesting people as well. It gives you a chance to study your subjects as though you'd be studying at university, and it's just a fun thing to do. And it also gives you something to write about in your personal statement as well when it comes to about university, because universities like to see the ways you've explored your subjects, and attending like a summer school or a math camp on your subject is, yeah, a good way to do that. Now, this doesn't mean you should wait around and wait for your sixth form to tell you which summer schools you should be attending or something like that, or tell you which ones exist. It requires you to do some Googling and find out which summer schools and math camps exist in the UK and stuff like that. For yourself, because I mean, many sixth forms just don't tell their students, and if they do tell them, then it's probably going to be like a few days before the deadline, which may not give you time to write the best possible application for them. Now, some summer schools and math camps are free, but many are paid as well, and if you're from a disadvantaged background, then you can usually get a scholarship or get some money off, which is what I did for the Eton College one, which was, I think, £400. But I managed to go there for free, which was good. But many of my friends over there still spent the £400, and because it was like 10 days long, they said that £400 was really well spent, and because it was already subsidized quite a bit. So If you're reluctant to spend the money, then I would still really recommend spending it if you have the money, of course. If you don't, then ask for some kind of financial aid or something from the summer school or math camp or whatever. Now, even during the academic year, there are some really good competitions you could be entering as well. Like there are essay competitions advertised by different universities for students in sixth form, and I remember there being like one physics research competition as well, where you sort of investigate something and write a report. And there's also like a cryptography competition, I think, as well, which one of my friends entered. Now, some of these essay competitions, summer schools, math camps, all this sort of opportunities, their deadlines can be quite early. So I would recommend Googling for them over the summer and trying to find which ones you would like to take part in, because generally they will have run it in previous years. And they will update the website for the following year. So if they haven't updated the website yet to tell you when applications open or close, then I would just recommend adding it onto a list and checking back like every week or something for when they open. And when they have opened and you want to keep track of which applications you're making, then you can also add onto the spreadsheet when the deadline is and sort of pay attention to that and generally be proactive in finding these opportunities. And for some reason, if you don't find anything you're interested in, or just don't get anything, then sending cold emails to people is a really great way as well. Because you have very little to lose by sending a cold email to, say, a lab or a local startup, just being like, hey, can I come in for a few days, get some work experience, see how you guys do things and stuff like that. And then just say like, oh, it will help me sort of gauge whether I want to do this at university, and just writing a nice email like that. There is actually a link down below to an article which I recommend on the best way to write cold emails, and I would recommend doing that because there's very little to lose, and there's just so much to gain from like sending out these cold emails. And most of the cold emails I've sent, like I generally receive positive responses if they genuinely can't help me, or they tell me, or they give me a contact I can contact instead, and stuff like that. But yeah, generally be proactive in finding these opportunities and try to Google for a bunch of them over the summer, especially summer schools and math camps if you're applying for maths, that is, because they're insanely good and you get to meet so many interesting people and you just generally have a great time overall. And now my next recommendation is to explore the subjects you sort of want to be doing going forwards, because you can usually only change your A-level options about 2 to 3 weeks into your A-levels, or like even 4 or 5 weeks, which is a bit of a stretch. It depends on your school, but just taking some time to explore like what sort of paths it may lead you down, or what degree you'd want to be doing after it or something, is really generally a good investment of your time. But I'd recommend not getting too caught up on the degree and what future career prospects you'd have from it, because I mean, like I do physics and people say to me, oh, are you just going to become a physics teacher afterwards, or like become a physicist? Like they think my opportunities are pretty limited, but the real value in a degree comes out of the skills you're gaining from that degree, not so much the content. And this is a thing that a lot of employers know and recognize. It's more about the skills you're getting, which is why you have people who like study chemical engineering and then just go into data science, despite that not being linked to chemical engineering much at all, because the employers know that they've gained useful skills from doing this like STEM-based degree. And yeah, there's just generally so much you can do with just any degree. Well, most degrees, not all degrees, I guess, not in like esports gaming or something like that, which is a thing. But yeah, as an example, like one of my friends, his older brother studied chemistry here, and then he said, oh, well, he just sort of had enough of chemistry. So he did a master's in like information engineering, and now he's sort of working as a data scientist at BlackRock. And you'd think like just him studying chemistry at the beginning, the only thing he could probably do is be a chemist or a chemistry teacher or work in a lab or something. But no, now he's like working at as a data scientist in some like big financial firm or whatever. So my final recommendation is that you should try to get into a right frame of mind going into your A-levels, especially if you go into a new sixth form, because remember that sixth form is not going to last forever. It's just going to be 2 years when you're doing your A-levels. So there's no need to get involved with drama or trying to impress people or doing all the sort of stuff that you generally be doing in year 7 to year 9 or year 10, because it's just not a valuable use of your time at all. And many of the people at your sixth form you probably won't speak to or see them again unless you're going to the same universities, because despite how close of friends you may think you are right now, if they go to a different university and you go to a different one as well, then you'd spend more time making new friends there, and so would they, and you just gradually speak less, and then eventually, like 2-3 years later, you'd lose touch, which has happened to me so far, like having spent 2 years at Cambridge. Although this doesn't apply for everyone, I know a few people who do keep in touch with their friends from sixth form and still catch up with them when they go back home and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just something worth thinking about. But yeah, that's basically most of the video. My final suggestion is to sort of enjoy the journey as well in sixth form, because I think that it's so easy to get caught up in a system whereby you keep working for the next thing ahead. So you work a lot in sixth form to get into like a really good university, and then say that you'll enjoy life when you get to university. And plenty of people say that, and then they say, oh, well, I'm going to work hard at university and then enjoy life after they graduate and get a job. And then people they start working a lot during their career, and they say, oh, I'll enjoy life when I get this promotion, or like when I'm at this stage or earning this much. And they just keep pushing back this chance for them to actually enjoy life. So I recommend keeping that in mind. You don't have to be working 24/7 during a sixth form and during your A-levels. There is a chance to step back and sort of hang out with friends and meet some new and interesting people and stuff like that. But yeah, don't get too carried away with either by saying enjoying way too much and not getting any work done, or just spending all your time working and it being detrimental to your mental health and stuff like that. But yeah, that's basically for this video. Hopefully you learned something useful and you sort of have a better idea of what you should be doing over the summer. I would recommend checking out the links in the description and checking out the playlists and videos which I mentioned during the video as well. But for now, I guess I'll see you in the next video.